Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here on this Monday the 10th of June, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to be dealing with, first off, we're going to do questions and answers just for a few minutes of viewers from my show have sent in a few questions, and I'm going to get on to answering them. Let's take a look at them. First question is, and of course, I didn't use names in the questions. I'm just dealing with the questions only, but we're going to get right in there. And first question is, when the banking system finally implodes, what happens to the money we have saved in our savings accounts? And as I understand, our deposits will be billed in and or converted to bank shares. I would imagine such shares would lose value rather quickly. Well, personally, I'll tell you what I think. I think that the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, and working in conjunction with the Federal Reserve, U.S. Treasury, will do what they did during the last banking crisis, the Silicon Valley banking crisis. They come in very suddenly, and they insured all depositors, and they backstopped them all. Even the ones over $250,000 is they will. Because ultimately, behind the scenes, the Federal Reserve, they actually like inflation. It's a hidden tax. And they put the more money they can put into the system. See, they just don't want to take the blame for anything. This is the way. Politicians are the same way. They don't want to take the blame. They want, secretly, to see the system move in the direction they want it to go. And look, going back to the Federal Reserve, the early days of the Federal Reserve, when they first started, until now, they've destroyed like 98% of our dollars through inflation. If they don't like it, why did they do that? They did it because it benefits them. But they don't want to take the blame. They don't want, when the public sees massive inflation, they don't want the public getting upset with them. So this has all been kind of a ruse, this whole thing about tightening and everything. Yeah, it has restrained the system somewhat. Yeah, it has slowed down the economy somewhat. But ultimately, they're only going to go so far with this. I'm surprised they went this far with this ruse. Inflation has been triggered already, and it's going to come roaring in, and these banks are now in trouble big time. There's a lot of them, smaller banks in the United States that are in trouble big time, and it might really test the FDIC. If the FDIC, your Federal Deposit Insurance Commission, ensures your money goes down, you're only going to get a small fraction if it's not backstopped by the Fed. Say I'm wrong about that, and the Fed says, okay, we just can't cover all this. We're not going to cover the FDIC. We're not going to backstop them. We're just going to let them go under. And several medium to large size banks go down, and the Federal Reserve just can't cover it all. Not the Federal Reserve, but the FDIC can't cover it all. Let's just say that happens. Well, you're going to get cut really hard. Your bank accounts are going to take an awful haircut if that does happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to backstop it. But let's just say that does happen. You're taking that risk because the FDIC's only got enough money to cover. They don't have enough money to cover 60 banks going down or something like that. If it all happens suddenly, they just don't have it. And what do they have? I think it's 1.5% of your money. And that's what you'll get if they're not backstopped. So it's a precarious situation. This is really, the FDIC really runs similar to the way the whole structure of the banking system runs. They don't have your money in the vault. They're only required to have 10% of your money in the vault. Now I think they've even loosened those regulations to a certain degree. That's why it's called fractional reserve banking. So if they don't have your money, does the FDIC have your money? And they run the same way. They only have a very small percentage if they cover all depositors in America. It's just not there. And so it's okay as long as there's not a crisis. Yeah, they can cover one person, if the FDIC and insure your money, sure. But that's the way all insurance works. Your local insurance company that insures your house and stuff, they're fine provided that only one house burns down. Yeah, they can build a new house for the guy and pay off the insurance from the insurance company. But if every house in the whole city burns down, well, they're bankrupt too, because it's not designed for that. And what about the bank shares? Yeah, you're right. They would lose value rather quickly, especially in a bank that's on shaky grounds. But the alternative to this is something that they call a bail-in. They have bailouts where the banks get bailed out. They also have something new out there called a bail-in, and the legislation's already been put through a few years ago for bail-ins. Banks can or legally do it. And basically what they can do is trim some of your money from your account to pay. They haven't really done it only in one country, in Cyprus. They had a bail-in of the banks. But that was kind of like a test to see what would happen. Well, the people got upset and they said, hell no, you're not taking our money, the general public, right? And so that test didn't go so good for the banking system. So they perhaps won't go for a bail-in. Bailout's preferable when the Fed just comes along and says, okay, we're going to bail out your bank. That's preferable to the banking system. Now, next question is, what about money owed on credit cards? Will those debts be wiped out and everybody get to restart with a clean slate? Well, even in a crisis situation, the banking system never lets you off the hook. This whole thing about a debt jubilee and stuff, I'm very doubtful that that's going to actually happen. But what could very well happen is as the hyperinflation starts to hit, the banks are going to gouge you more and more, all they can, to try to get as much as they can. They're going to raise those interest rates on those credit cards to almost loan shark levels, But still, if inflation takes off even faster than that, the inflation will give credit card owners a break on what you're paying back on those credit cards. If you can imagine, by the time inflation gets to the point where an apple at the grocery store costs $1,000, say you do have a bit of credit card debt, past credit card debt, they're gonna take a little bit of a haircut, because on the opposite side of that is because if the runaway inflation is eating away the purchasing power, then the dollars you're paying them back are not worth as much as they were when you use those dollars. Say you've carried that debt for a couple of years, and even if they charge, inflation can get so fast and so hot that even if they're charging loan shark rates of interest, it's still, they're going to take a bit of a haircut on it because of inflation on the credit cards. But I do not see them giving you a get out of jail free card on the money that you owe them. The next question is, it says, I love your show. Thanks for keeping me updated on the money market and hot topics. Should we try investing in the currency that supports the BRICS system? If so, how can we obtain that type of currency? Well, for the average person out there, I don't think you're going to be able to obtain that type of currency, because mostly they're using this system right now for interbanking stuff to replace the SWIFT system. So if you're not a person that's been using the SWIFT system, if you're not a bank, if you're not in with the big players, I don't think you're going to be able to use this type of currency, at least not right away, the currency that the BRICS are using for trading oil and things like that. This is for big players and stuff. Now, in the future, maybe, I don't know, maybe there might be a possibility that you can obtain that type of currency. And if you're a big player, maybe you could obtain it now, you know. What I mean by big player is somebody who is locked into the system, locked into... But right now, the big players, you know, they're tied into the money pool. And they're making massive gains. The rich are getting so much richer right now. It's unbelievable. It's a game that's really set up for the rich people. And ultimately, what this is really is, it's the half of the world which represents all the BRICS nations, and say that's the eastern half of the world, and say we're the western half of the world. They're trying to come out from underneath a system that was called the petrodollar system, and they're being very successful at it. I think it was on the 9th of this month that it finally happened. The Saudis are not renewing their agreement for the petrodollar. It's ended, it's past. We're already past that date right now. And it's not going to have an immediate effect. The dollar's not going to go down in smokes and flames the next day. But this is just another piece in the puzzle for the dollars being moved into a status where it's not used to trade in oil. In other words, if it was a nail in the coffin for the dollar, this would be probably one of the chief nails to put the dollar to rest. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed the questions. Thank you for listening. Send me in more questions. The link's going to be in the description. The link is going to be at FTEquestions@gmail.com. Okay, it's all one word, FTE questions. So I'm going to put a link in the description to that website. You just copy paste it and send me some more questions, you know. Now, what's the biggest, there's a big war going on over in Ukraine right now. If you guys watch my channel, you've probably noticed that really well because I've been talking about it a lot. But is it the most important thing to the Allied forces over here, the NATO forces, the West, mostly made up by the most powerful nation in the West, which is the United States of America? What's the most important to them? Is it the war in Ukraine? Absolutely no, it's not. And they say it right here. He says, despite these historic clashes in Europe, that's talking about the war in Ukraine, and in the Middle East, that's talking about the war in Israel and Gaza. Despite these historic clashes in Europe and the Middle East, the Indo-Pacific has remained our priority theater of operations, he said. And I know that the United States their priority theater of operations is the Indo-Pacific. So when you see clashes, which have been happening quite recently, quite often, between the Philippines and China, when you see operations of navigational freedom by the United States in and around the Spratly Islands, and China gets upset, and maybe they got aircraft in the air, maybe they're following U.S. planes around and stuff, a accident could happen so easy that could spark a war in around that region because it's a hot spot. When you see China welling up against Taiwan and moving their ships and stuff in around Taiwan, this is the priority theater of operations. So, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin called these networks of partnership a new convergence in the Indo-Pacific region. However, his acknowledgement simultaneously challenges other theaters. Of course, we're not operating in a vacuum, he said on May 31st during the Global Defense Forum in Singapore. He said, despite these historic clashes in Europe and the Middle East, the Indo-Pacific has remained our priority theater of operations. So there's what you really need to watch out for the breaking out of World War III. Like I've told you guys in my shows, the tip of the spear for this new group of Russia, North Korea, China, all the BRICS nations, the tip of the spear is what they're doing over there. Russia has become the tip of the spear. But the other part down there is not to be looked over, because that's probably where it's really going to start. That's where General Mike Minhan sent the Minhan memo that I've quoted on my show a number of times about, was don't look over here, look over there. Okay? Now, the Russians right now, they're thinking about letting other countries host these long-range missiles. It says Russia could transfer long-range missiles to several of its allies. Well, you know what? Cuba's an ally. Just saying. According to a new map produced by Russian state media after NATO countries donated long-range missiles to Kiev and authorized some Ukrainian strikes within Russian territory, Russia now could transfer long-range missiles to several of its allies. How far does a long-range missile go? I don't know. I think they can go like a couple thousand miles. How far is Cuba from the mainland United States? Like 90 miles? How far is Washington from Cuba? Just wondering, you know. Questions I have. It's interesting, let's just say to say the least. Now, the silver price today, $29.42. It's up 29 cents. Silver today. Now, I told you guys, I said, hey, listen, I think that big day we had down, I mean, what was it, over 6% down in one day? Man, that was some smackdown, I'll tell you guys. That was a big one. That was really something. But I told you guys that was our correction. It was all in one day. Yeah, one day, big time correction. Now we're starting to drift back up again. 37 cents up today, 29.50. But you know, it didn't go into the 28s even. Even with that big day, it was up. It was like 20. What did it go down to? Like 29.16 or something like that. Now we're bouncing back from that. That's still a hell of a lot better than back just a couple months ago, you know, at $22 price. It's $29.50, you know. We still got a lot of that gain, and now we're starting to creep back, you know. So here we go. I believe that we're in the early stages, very early stages of a precious metals bull market that's going to last for maybe even decades. Quite seriously. It's going to create generational wealth for people who have invested heavily in things like silver. Gold price today is at $23.02. It's up $10.30 on the day. Now, the cryptocurrency market, we're looking at Bitcoin at 69,624, Ethereum at 36.78, and XRP at 50.2 cents. It's the 50-cent coin. Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 95 points. Almost said up. No, it's down 38,703. But you know, it's still near its all-time high. You condense this chart into a long-term chart. Take a look at this maximum chart. You can see that this, if you're looking at this as a bull market, you know, taking a look at over the long term, going back to like 1993, and just take a look at this. This kind of parallels with the bull market in bonds. This lasted like over the last over 40 years. What this is an expansion of credit. What you're seeing there is an expansion of credit, basically. A long-term expansion of credit going all the way back into the early 1990s. And the subsequent generations now that have grown up underneath this expansion of credit are, I'm not going to, here in the West, I'm not going to label it any other way except they've been very, very much spoiled, and they're very entitled feeling. And so now we're moving into a period where we might see this crack at a certain point, if not crack, hyperinflate. But that's both the same thing. One is you see it go down. But the other, to see this market hyperinflate, you'd see it shoot up. It almost looks like it's trying to make a hockey stick curve to the upside. And the hyperinflation would do that, because a hyperinflating stock market, it reflects on the purchasing power of the dollar, you know. Taking a look at the crude oil today. Crude oil is up 77 cents at 76.30. Bonds and rates today, we're looking at rising yields. 30 years risen 4.5 basis points, and it stands at 4.59. The U.S. 10 years risen 3.3 basis points, and it's at 4.46. And the U.S. dollar index is today, it's up 0.41, or 3% of 1%, 0.39%. It's up. It's at 105.30. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Join up to my channel, and you get a lot of perks, and you really help support my channel. I really appreciate that when you join up. It doesn't cost very much, and it's well worth it to my channel to help me keep this channel on the air, you know. I mean, I have associated costs and time and labor into this channel. And it's right down on the bare wire right now. It's having a hard time. I don't know whether it's due to the YouTube algorithm or what, but it really helps support my channel. It's an easy way to support my channel, and you get to watch my weekend shows, and you don't have to wait for the show when it comes out. You can just go right there and get right on it. So hit the join button, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Have a great day. Bye-bye.